You're just
People, do they like econ? Not do you like econ?
And then you have pause and stop. So stop will end it completely, but pausing it will obviously. So cool. All right, everyone, we are going to get started. Obviously, there's not a lot to do today because Halloween weekend, but we're going to do the best of what we have. All right. So today is our vaccine ghU led by our internal committee. So we're going to go ahead and go through this. Also, I know this cuts it off, but this is the best we can do. So if something needs to be read, there is the laptop here for you if you're reading something on the screen. But this is as close as we can get it to being actually readable and everything. Okay, so community building, Siobhan, you're up.
So I was not expecting a specific layout, but the point was to get up and mingle, and find someone that you share your favorite Halloween candy with. Doesn't feel like pairs of people, but like groups of like 2 to 3, and then ask them Halloween questions.
Okay.
Thank you, Mary. Thank you. You want to get up, have your candy in mind, and then ask them about it.
Don't worry about it. All right, my favorite candy. That's a secret. I think my favorite candy is going to be What's your
Once you find your group of people, feel free to scooch off inside and talk to your Yeah, it's my mic. I need to have something that makes it sound like it's like a placebo effect of speaking louder. You know. Here's some. I found some wholesome memes. The girl sent me this one on the far one. If the yes got cut off, then how was really funny. These are my more wholesome memes for Halloween, and these are the. They don't this is just for me more than anything else. I'm taking that right now, and it's not great. Not great for me specifically. But yeah. Hope you enjoyed. You did it. It's fine. Who's up?
Hi, everyone. So today, we're going to talk about vaccines and external. They did a tabling event on Vaccine Hesitancy last week. So we just want to follow up on that. So we got a little bit of like background and stuff like that, and then we had a case. Oh, I'm fine. Please enjoy our vaccine.
I love it.
So basically, how vaccines work is they give you a beacon form of the virus. So let's say if you're getting a COVID vaccine, they would give you a beacon form of the COVID virus, and they make it into, it's called an antigen, and then they insert it into your body. And what that does is it alerts the body to make antibodies for that beacon virus, so that the next time they see that particular virus in a surge, they'll create more antibodies and remember it, and then destroy the body, giving you immunity. And this is like a general background. It shows like how they give you, insert a small dose, and then your body creates antibodies, and then if they see it again, they make more antibodies, and you're immune to the virus.
Video about the same thing. Oh no. No. Is there no sound for this thing?
Actually, there might be, because I think you can use that.
Speaker right there?
Oh, yeah.
Next, Lucy, your baby. The recommended how to spell liar.
To understand how vaccines function, we need to know how the immune system defends us
Yes, I did. I'll do this for
against contagious diseases in the first place. When foreign microbes invade us, the immune system triggers a series of responses in an attempt to identify and remove them from our bodies. The signs that this immune response is working are the coughing, sneezing, inflammation, and fever we experience, which work to trap, deter, and rid the body of threatening things like bacteria. These innate immune responses also trigger our second line of defense, called adaptive immunity. Special cells called B cells and T cells are recruited to fight microbes and also record information about them, creating a memory of what the invaders look like and how best to fight them. This know-how becomes handy if the same pathogen invades the body again. But despite this smart response, there's still a risk involved. The body takes time to learn how to respond to pathogens and to build up these defenses. And even then, if a body is too weak or young to fight back when it's invaded, it might face very serious risk if the pathogen is particularly severe. But what if we could prepare the body's immune response, readying it before someone even got ill? This is where vaccines come in. Using the same principles that the body uses to defend itself, scientists use vaccines to trigger the body's adaptive immune system without exposing humans to the full-strength disease.
Yeah, that's a very long video. That's pretty much it about adaptive immunity. Basically, just the reason that vaccines have come into existence is because you can train your body to recognize a pathogen before it becomes a serious illness. And it's just like practicing before a football game, a lot of that. It's just kind of giving your body a little heads up that, hey, this might come into your body at some point. And then when it does, if it does, then you're in good shape.
Right. So the COVID vaccines work a little bit differently than most regular vaccines. So for example, like the flu vaccine, like Audrey said, you have like little dead parts of the vaccine or the virus that are put inside your body, antigens. Your immune cells detect that, and antibodies, et cetera, the whole 9 yards, as with the last video. The COVID vaccines, they work a bit differently. So there are 2 types, as you know, there's like the mRNA vaccine and like the viral vector vaccine. And they kind of work in the same way. Basically, they both end up making the muscle cells in your arms produce like the spike proteins that are that COVID makes. Your immune system is like, oh no, this is a bad thing. Well, we don't want that here. So they make antibodies, and they keep memory T cells based on these antibodies, B and T cells. And then the booster shots, those are the same thing. They're just the same. Both shots are the same. It's just that it just makes your body react again, and this time preferably faster, which is why you get more symptoms in the second shot. And so some fun facts, Moderna and Pfizer vaccines, they're like the mRNA ones, while the viral vector ones are AstraZeneca and Johnson & Johnson. And I'm sure you guys have heard that like Johnson & Johnson is like a little bit less, has a lower efficacy than like the other ones. And that's probably because the research I found is it's most likely because they only do 1 dose rather than 2. So
Yeah, speaking from experience, I took the AstraZeneca one in India, and that's 2 doses.
so the type of like vaccine doesn't really matter for like how effective your body's response can be against COVID. It's for now it's like just how many doses you get. Another fun fact, the COVID vaccine was the first mRNA vaccine ever developed. So yeah.
Science.
And now we're going to break out into groups. So internal members come gather around, and we're going to kind of run off some.
Let's start with this side, I guess. Start with you.
1.
2.
4.
Just 1.
1, no, only 3.
Oh, 1, 2, 3.
1, but you're 1. Oh, you're 1.
2, 3. 2, 3.
So I guess 1s can come here, 1s go to that table, 2s go to this table.
So you record the breakout group? Yeah, you just record whatever you're talking about.
Gathered here today.
What number was this?
1. Elizabeth?
What number was this? Was it 3?
I remember faces so much better than I remember names.
I don't remember either.
That's so funny.
I don't know. Like, there's this one guy who like lives here. Like, he's like my neighbor in my dorm. He keeps saying, "Hi, Sarah." I don't know how he knows my name. Apparently, he went to my high school. I've never seen this man.
I have a girl at my research position, and I talk to her like twice a week, and I forgot her name after the first week and never asked again, and now it's been like 2 months, and I can't ask what her name
He
is.
says, "Hi, Sarah," every time I see
So
him, and I genuinely don't know. Like,
That's so
I don't know.
Hey. So you know our LCs have like 18 feet.
Yeah.
How come we know like 9 or 10?
It's because the only reason I don't know my else's name is because like every 2 weeks we go around and tell everyone.
That's smart, because I would forget.
We only do that the first like 2
No,
weeks.
we do it every 2 weeks.
I don't know.
Like
everyone.
maybe every week. Like
Oh,
we
that makes
do
me
it
feel
all
better
the
about my
time.
life, because I'm a second year, so last year my LC was online, and so I know people who were like in my groups more for like in class, for like who was in my bio lab group, and who did I just get thrown into like breakout rooms a lot with, that kind of thing, or who was at the station next to me in chem lab.
Oh yeah.
And so I'm like, I don't really know that many people from.
I only know
my
those
LC.
people.
Okay, that makes me feel better, because I was like, oh, like normally everyone's like, I still schedule with my LC, and I'm like,
I mean,
no, I
my
don't remember
all
half
my
my
friends,
LC.
well, like 95% of my friends are from the LC.
I feel like much like after I came.
I'm like half and half.
Wait, no. Yeah, like half and half.
But I was like forced to make more friends outside of class because we didn't go to class. So
There was like this friend group that all went to the same school, like in high school, that I kind of just like inserted myself into.
that's pretty nice. Me with you and Simia like knew each other already, and I was just like, hey guys, you help me out in chem lab. We're gonna be best friends now.
You guys know each other. Okay, that's good. Hi guys. I'm your friend now.
So
Are we gonna do names?
Oh shoot, they probably sent that out and I just like forgot that we were having a worksheet or something. Yeah, we were just not. That's awkward. I really thought we were just waiting for instructions.
yeah.
My bad.
It's not my phone.
Oh no.
Introduce yourself in your Halloween costume.
Ooh, I can go first. I'm Joanna. I mean, my Halloween costume. I had 2 Halloween costumes. I was White Swan, and then I was just a really like basic. Like we just wore jerseys because it was cold on Friday, and I didn't want to wear skirts. So I don't know what you would call that. Just wore jerseys, but yeah.
I'm Rashank, and my Halloween costume was a lumberjack.
Oh, you know what? That's okay. 'Cause the number of cowgirls and like cowboys that I saw.
It was a low budget. I didn't buy a single thing. I just had a flannel and some khakis. Just put that on.
I did that last year. I was a scarecrow. I
Yeah.
had a flannel and some jeans.
I was a lumberjack yesterday as well.
Yeah.
I was cold and I was like, I want to wear a flannel. So
Yeah.
lumberjack.
I'm Elizabeth. I was a princess.
I'm Jonathan. So I was lumberjack yesterday, and on Friday, my team at work went as the X-Men,
Oh,
and
that's so
so
fun.
I had to 3D print like a visor for like Cyclops, which was kind of fun to like make and design. So that was like my big Halloween thing. But the rest of the costume I put very low on for too. And then lumberjack, yeah, flannel and jeans.
I'm Sarah, and I like to dress up. Like I never just.
All right. So what are some reasons why people would be hesitant to take vaccines in the U.S., Thailand, or other countries?
Because people get magnetized.
Yeah.
We're room 3, right?
Yeah. I was gonna say like, yeah.
But people also don't understand all the
People think that it's just like injected. Like it's a lot of it is just rumors and conspiracy theories to be honest.
I feel like,
I think a lot of it too was like political with COVID.
Yeah.
and I feel like if, and it comes down like a little bit to politics, but if maybe the government's gonna be pushing for you to get a vaccine, maybe they should do a little bit better job of explaining exactly what it, how it works. Like even just something as simple as what we just did, like nobody needs to know like the nitty gritty if you're not a scientist, but like learning how to educate the public in a way that's not what, like not speaking above like the public's head, but also not speaking down to them, like we're all stupid for not being scientists, like you know what I mean, like for not being like a PhD. But you know what I mean, like I feel like instead of like again like the rumors and everything that's got spread around, if we just did like a little bit more education for everybody and everyone just understood what they were getting, we would be okay or better.
I was just gonna say
I mean, there are historical reasons though, like why some communities are more hesitant about vaccines than others. So, like if there's been a history of medical malpractice, so I think there's a lot of the reasons for why the African American community tend to be lower vaccination rates than others. So, like then if you're trusting more of you have reason to trust your family legacy and the people around you more than your medical professionals, and they're all choosing not to get vaccinated, then that makes sense, you know.
I know like the autism study vaccines cause autism. I know that was a big thing. Even my mom was like scared because of that. She didn't like read the study or understand like why it wasn't valid.
It was actually really interesting. I had to do a presentation for a class last year about like the anti-vax movement, how it got started and all that. And like way back in the day, it was actually a way to like rebel against the British because they were like doing like crazy taxes and like all these requirements, and they were forcing people to get like, they weren't quite vaccines, like it was just inoculation and stuff like that back in the day, but it was basically a way for them, like they were required to do it or you got like fined or like you got punished somehow. And so it was just a way for them to like rebel against the government. They could just be like, no. And then there's like a big religious component to it too, where they were like, oh, well, like if I get sick and I die, it's because God willed it.
Yeah.
That kind of thing, where it's like, this is my immune system. This is like, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I don't want something foreign, just like injected.
Or like something made in a lab. Even though like all our food is.
Yeah, I mean, there's still communities like the Jehovah's Witnesses, I think, and then Mormons as well, like that are against, like, I mean, even blood transfusions, like anything foreign being introduced into their body.
Wait, what?
Yeah,
For Joe.
yeah, they won't have blood transfusions.
They just die?
Yeah.
Yep.
That sucks.
Remember you saw in PD?
What?
In PD. You watched the video. Yeah, I'm pretty sure you did.
We did.
That's so funny.
I'm like half asleep.
Well, me too. That's what.
Wait, like I missed the whole video. Was that like the?
Maybe it was a video, or maybe somebody like we talked about it.
We did.
Remember that 30 minutes?
Was it the day that you guys did the blood work pathogens like certificate?
We never did that.
No, but I mean like the day she like sent out the email for that.
Yeah, but no one's ever done it. We didn't get to that.
Okay. Well, with that day or whatever, I skipped. So maybe it was that.
I skipped last week.
I don't know. I just completely missed that. I might have been asleep. Not gonna lie.
I guess we're into discussion.
Yeah, just finishing up with the first question.
I
maybe.
do too.
Oh, nice. How you guys talk about like what do you guys talk about?
So far, just like kind of the usual, like sensationalist communications and news. Some of the like historical reasons, like communities that were discriminated against by kind of professionals in the past. We brought up religious beliefs as a religious objection to it. Joanna was making a point about apparently like some of the origins of anti-vaccinationism.
It was really far back, like it was like with the British, like it was just like a way to like rebel against your government and like fight back. You know what I mean? Like, you know what I mean? So it was less about being like anti-vax for any particular reason other than the government was telling you to do it and you didn't like your government. You know what I mean?
It's the kind of there's the kind of like in Thailand, like a bunch of people like that there's the vaccine hesitancy. You'll see that next slide. But there's like a lot of the vaccine hesitancy comes from mistrust in the government and like healthcare systems. So it's like, oh, why should I? Have you guys talked about the ghU experiment? That's also like
No, we have not actually.
You kind of touched on that.
Yeah, very briefly. I could not remember the name of it, so that's why I didn't bring it up more. But so the Tuskegee, if you guys haven't heard about the Tuskegee experiment, so it was syphilis experimentation done on black men in the, I want to say the 60s and 70s. So it's the origin of a lot of current laws against or for like informed consent in clinical trials. Essentially, several hundred black men were injected with syphilis and given no treatment, despite penicillin being an effective and widely known and widely available treatment for syphilis. So the US government ran this experiment to sort of see what would happen if you didn't treat syphilis for a long time. And many of them died very painful deaths because of the disease. At no point were they told that they weren't told what they were being injected with. They weren't told what the purpose of the study was. It was just a gross violation of bodily autonomy and patient rights, and it was one of the catalysts for a lot of the current informed consent movement and why we have such stringent standards for human experimentation. And so that's one of the examples of why a lot of people in the African American community have little trust in the medical community because of past experiments like the Tuskegee experiments.
So you have the next question about how you would try to address vaccine hesitancy. I guess.
I feel like it depends on the situation. I would say like explaining how it works. Broad.
Definitely education, obviously, and which would help some of it, but then it still comes down to how do you fix mistrust. You know what I mean? So you can be telling the truth and you can be like, this is how a vaccine works, or this is how let's say the COVID vaccine works specifically. And like, you know, as the person putting it out there, maybe like, let's say, like, I'm a scientist, this is my research paper and I know it's legit and it's true. But like, if in the past, like your history is like that experiment, like how do you convince people that this time you're telling the truth. And like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know what the answer is. That was just another question, but still.
There's only so much that facts can do, right? Like
Yeah.
you need to meet people where they are. And so I think,
It's not like you can break down like centuries of mistrust within like one.
yeah. I think like Saw's peer education model is really useful here. So if a lot of this information against vaccines is coming from people in the community, and you can convince a few key people like, hey, like, you know, this is maybe the history of why your community doesn't trust vaccinations. Let's work with you as a key and influential person in the community to try and address that mistrust. Like, do you believe that vaccines are effective? What can we do to work with you to address this within your community? It's much more effective than just like PSAs during the Super Bowl or whatever. Like, you know, like the COVID one was.
Right, like, yeah,
Yeah.
that's gonna convince people.
Yeah. Any other ideas? What do you think the role of like, what's the word? Like exemptions? Like there's like religious exemptions, but then there's also like just like what do they call them? Conscientious exemptions. Like if you just have a firmly held belief in not being vaccinated, you can get exempted for that. You see it's a good example, you can get one of those. Like, do you think that's a good policy when we're talking about something that's a public health crisis, or is it something that, you know, we should be infringing on some people's personal liberties for the good of everybody? Do you guys have any thoughts?
Hey everyone, we're gonna start going to the major discussion in 4 minutes, so start like closing up your discussion.
I struggle because I feel like if there's, because I see both sides. Like I see people have legitimate like religious or like obviously if you have like a medical issue, and like so to me that's very legit. Like you believe this your whole life, that's how you were raised. Like that's all fine with me. But like there are people who just take advantage of those policies who just don't want the vaccine, like this particular like COVID vaccine. And so I don't want, I feel like I never know like the real answer. Like it's just hard because it's like, yeah, like how do you determine who's telling the truth and who is actually believes those things.
Yeah, and then also where you draw the line of like who is allowed to do that.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, is the sincerity of the belief the only thing that's required?
Right, exactly.
Yeah, it's like, I mean.
And then it comes down to, it's like, okay, so that's your belief, but you're still spreading COVID, you're still spreading the disease, but how do you force someone?
You can't be like, oh, you have to force it if you haven't gotten the vaccine. Like, you can't do that either.
Yeah, it's,
I don't know what you do.
I don't,
Like,
I
I'm not gonna
literally
lie,
don't know.
I am not
Yeah.
a law student, guys.
Well, I mean, there's people trying both sides. So I think New York, the public school system, the only exemptions you can get are now like medical. Like even most religious exemptions have been kind of done away with. So like, you know, that's one extreme example. Or I think Ohio in general has been pretty lax on if you have just any like sincerely held philosophical belief, you can get an exemption for the vaccine.
But the thing is, I kind of agree with New York's point too. Like I do see that side as well. Like it is important for like for most people to get vaccinated.
And I guess to a certain extent, it comes down to, I don't know how to describe it other than like it's still your choice to not get that vaccine. And if like for school, like for example, schools, especially where there's still so many young kids who they can't get a vaccine. Like, and so I guess that's not a great example, like the, but like let's say adults, right? Like, or like, and then up above, and like if you're all in the same building, you just have so many people around. So let's say like you have a high school where you can have every single person in that building vaccinated, and but half of them are exempt. So half, like you know what I mean? Like it still comes down to like you can, like, if you require that, like, you can get it. It's still your choice not to get it. And if your kid can't go to school, then you need to figure out, like, it's not like that hard cut, because that's not exactly what I mean.
Yeah.
But I can see that side of it, where I'm like, but I'm doing everything right for, like, my kid or me as a person in a high school or a college. It's like, so why can't I be safe?
Yeah.
Shouldn't the public, everybody in that building, isn't it better for them all to be safe? But yeah, like, I don't know.
Yeah, I think I said.
They don't even consider that.
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult when you have like the efficiency of your decision depends on other people's choices as well. It's impossible to ever just make everybody happy. So,
I guess talk about like how like the like damage that can be done like by anti-vaxxers to like herd immunity.
we've touched on that a little bit, I think. Like we were just, so I was just asking, like, what do you think about non-religious exemptions to vaccines? Like, how do we sort of feel about that? And I mean, so that was the point Joanna was bringing up, like, if you are vaccinated and you're in an environment with a lot of people that aren't vaccinated, then, your decision to get vaccinated is less effective because you're not able to protect people who can't be vaccinated. But, yeah.
But then like some people are also allergic, like actually allergic to some vaccines.
Right.
So for those who like can't like actually get
They
that,
actually, that's,
herd immunity is like very important.
for me personally, that's what frustrates me the most, is that people who are just like, they like take advantage of that rule where it's like, oh, like, I don't want it for like, if it's very based on like conspiracy theory. It like frustrates me because it's like, you just know there's people out there who, if they could get the vaccine, like they would, or they just, like you said, like they depend on everybody else in the whole community.
Mhm.
And you get no vaccines and you're just not for something that's not based on facts.
And you're not like fulfilling your like responsibilities.
All right, everyone. Someone can choose like one member from each group to like designate their main points. And we'll start. With, are you guys can still discuss it? Yeah, so this is how I go first.
So do you feel comfortable doing that?
I looked over and I was like, wait.
So how is the question? First, everyone to go.
Okay, so we just talked a lot about how, especially in a lot of like the global countries that we look at, don't have a lot of information about the vaccine. And then especially in like the USA, the government regulation of the vaccine really scared a lot of people off. And how there is a lot of like too little or too much media coverage that kind of scared people off, because you see those articles about the vaccine can kill me. And then we also talked about like having religious exemptions, and especially like the Mormon, Jehovah Witness population, people where they don't want to put stuff in their immune system. That didn't make sense. You know what I meant. They don't want to do that, and how kind of like that is actually a good decision if it's for a solid religious standpoint. We talked a lot about how polio was affected in like Florida, and how like without vaccinations people can become very seriously ill, and how like encouraging people to get vaccinated, it's just like to carry that to people around you, even if like you don't necessarily have a relationship with them, just spread it out to the other people and who they're in contact with is important.
Yeah, in the USA especially, there's this like weird like trend and bias dictating like how the vaccine works. There's also like this partisan kind of relationship with the COVID vaccine. That was kind of weird. I didn't see that like, when I was looking at other countries. So yeah, good points. Which group wants to go next?
So a lot of what we discussed were people being afraid of the side effects, and I don't know. I think the word ignorant is kind of like too negative connotation today, but just like the fact that they just don't know about the vaccine and what the side effects actually are. And so because they don't know that, they end up being scared of them and will trust misinformation that makes them feel safer. We also mentioned, like, on the topic of misinformation, that it travels faster, and then so many things can like help that. So like I mentioned how since I'm from a small community, people will be like, well, some things kind of happen to line up and that will work. So like they like believe misinformation that just happens to coincidentally sometimes be, and it's like, we're a small town, so it's kind of a protected bubble. People don't really get it. So like, well, it's a hoax, it has to be. But like Akash mentioned how like in India, there's like a lot of alternative medicine. And so people will sometimes believe misinformation about alternative medicine rather than like getting the vaccine because it's easier to get a hold of alternative medicine and feel safer about it. And then as far as like other hesitancy things, like a way to like help it is to have like multiple conversations over a longer period of time. Because like nobody really says like, here are the facts about vaccines, and then they change their mind, right? Like no one ever does that. And then just trying to do it in like a nice way that is like apolitical as possible. Because like you said, like in the United States, it's one of the only places where it's like super political. So anytime you get close to that, it's just going to derail the conversation and it's not going to be productive. So just do what you can to make the most productive conversation and try to do it in the most loving, gentle, but educational way you can.
Points. Has anybody read the book The Misinformation Age? I think that's what it's called. Basically, like one of the arguments they said in their book was like, in order to change like a small group's mind, you have to like go towards a small group, kind of become a part of it, and then try to like relate to them, go on their terms. And if someone in the small group is able to like switch their mind, then a lot of other people will follow through, like a catalyst for change, basically.
I was gonna say that also the thing about like misinformation is really interesting that you brought that up because it's like very common. And I remember in high school they taught us how to figure out if something is like fake news or not, or if it's okay and stuff like that. And it was what you said. It was just like if it's very circumstantial and it falls in line coincidentally, then it's like, well, you should second guess it, or, you know, question it. So that's really good. Like encouraging people to ask questions is probably where is a good place to start. I think.
So we also talked a lot about side effects like you guys did, and then also like misinformation about side effects. So like historically, groups have thought that vaccines might cause like infertility, or like some people thought there was like a microchip in the COVID vaccine, or autism was a really big one. Also, we talked about like historical reasons that people might mistrust vaccines. So a lot of like some racial minorities have faced like malpractice, like you were saying. So like the Tuskegee experiments and such. And because of that, those groups are less likely to trust their healthcare providers and get vaccinated. And then also you mentioned like a really cool, like a lot of people didn't get vaccinated during like the Revolutionary Age because they wanted to rebel against the British government. So there's also that. And then mistrust in the government and like in the medical community in general. And then for ways to lower vaccine mistrust, we said explain in broad details, like provide more education to people. And then we also mentioned that a lot of the time you can't break those, you can't like break those myths within one conversation, because that's like people might be misinformed for like centuries. So you can't like break that in like one conversation, so that like it's like a longer journey to like break that, if that makes sense.
Definitely a slow grind to like push in people's minds. And then you point like the vaccines have autism.
That was science at its worst. Like scientific integrity at its worst right there. But yeah, we were saying about multiple conversations. I remember one of my professors had said recently that in order to try and when you talk to people about getting vaccinated or things like that, it's more important to tell them how it has affected you and how your life is better because of it, rather than telling them that, oh, you should get the vaccine, or you should do this, you should do that. It's better to kind of think of it in terms of that my life is better now that I've, for example, taken the COVID vaccine. I'm safer to go outside. I feel better to live my life as normal again. That makes sense. Things like that. That's just something to try.
When I think about centuries in class about like science, and one of the things that's like talked about how is like we're given this assumption that if we give people facts, like that's how science is learned, but like so much of how we learn science is like based on our values that we have. So or like going in.
I thought that Jonathan brought up a really good point. He said that it's when we were talking about how would you address like vaccine hesitancy, when he said like, well, look at what we do with SAW with our peer educators. And so it's kind of along like the same line. So if you like, you guys are all just saying like going in and understanding the community, and like as Sabrish said, where you like change one person's mind, like those are the people that you're talking about, right? Like the people who are influential in a community. And if you talk to them and have like real, again, like those long conversations, because it is like a long journey, like you guys are all saying, but I thought that was a really cool connection to how like what we see SAW doing. And like obviously like they aren't necessarily addressing vaccine hesitancy, but that's still a great model to follow in trying to educate communities.
Yeah. So I just wanted to, you guys kind of covered most of the points on the slide. But I just want to talk a little bit about vaccine hesitancy and its dangers. As we all know, vaccines were a major public health breakthrough. But there's some people who still can't get vaccines. That's why some of the concept of herd immunity is important. It's just like basically people need to reach a 95% threshold of vaccinated people to protect the people who aren't vaccinated, who can't get vaccinated. And this is where vaccine hesitancy plays a role. And of course, there's a very, very negative role. It's affecting public health of like many civilizations or societies. Anyway, in the US and Thailand, vaccine hesitancy, two major reasons, and you guys talked about this, were mistrust in like the vaccine efficacy, and like the fear of side effects. Again, you guys brought this up. Of course, a lot of information swirling about it, but it comes from like all sides. And in the US, there's also like this weird partisan media bias against vaccines or towards them. And there's also like a big part of like relation to just like we talked about where like Jehovah's Witnesses and like Mormons are like, oh, I don't want this stuff in my body, which I don't know how I feel about that, but despite all that, as of now, 70% of people in the US have gotten at least one vaccine dose for COVID-19. And there are also 80 to 90% immunizations for other vaccines. In Thailand, the main reason for like vaccine hesitancy is due to their like mistrust in their healthcare system, and in how their government handled the vaccine, because there's been like so many delays and like just like lies about how the vaccine has been like handed out. And because of that, only 70% have gotten at least one vaccine, only 60% have gotten at least one vaccine dose. And for the other types of vaccines, it's kind of hard to find information on it, to be like honest. But it looks like 70% to 90% of immunizations for other common vaccines. And to the right here, yeah, to the left actually. You can see how, okay, the top shows just strategies to like get people to avoid false vaccine hesitancy. And it kind of talks about what you're talking about, where you have to educate like communities based on this thing, but it has to come from within the community. And that's where it's most effective. It also plays into like what we talked about in the first ghU, that community health is public health. And on the right side, we can look at the pictogram below. Vaccine hesitancy has been decreasing as time has been going on. So that's a nice thing to know. One other thing I want to note about like Thailand especially is that for migrants, there's a lot, they have a lot lower like vaccination percentage than like other populations. And we talked about this before. There are many terms of health that affect how like, migrants get healthcare. There's a lot of barriers to their education and their access to healthcare. So of course, they have to be less vaccinated. And I like when I was researching like vaccination rates in Thailand, a lot of the things were saying that like, oh, they're like breaks in migrant communities because of their inability to access appropriate healthcare. And to the graph, you can see the vaccine, like these are measles cases, MMR vaccine. I just want to point this one out because again, a lot of this was because of like the really like crappy paper MMR vaccine, because it said MMR vaccines cause autism. So that also caused a lot of distress.
Fun time. All right, nobody get your phone. try. Try to make this work. Yeah, that's what I thought. There we go. Okay. Hopefully it came with an automatic Halloween theme, but. Yeah. Oh, why are they two? No, it's two. Can I just stay as those? Oh my God. Hold on. I don't know. Wait a minute. When those go into sleep right now. Yep, is that everyone? This is like no people here.
Well, there's also 4 no's on this.
People who are in town don't like going to the answers.
Guys, just keep track of who is which Noah.
Wait, actually, next one.
No.
So, you know all the answers.
All right, let's go. Yeah, that's the next question. And then I'll do those next. Oh, shoot. I don't know.
Okay, I actually have an issue with this question, but I'll bring it up later. He was not, he's not the father of vaccination.
He is technically the father of vaccination.
He's technically not, and I'm thinking.
I think Columbus right now.
Start off strong.
I don't care what I looked at.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
that's true. I was like,
I actually got them from Ybor Richmond for winning something. Wish Maria were here.
Where'd you guys go?
Where'd we go? It was virtual.
No one the first. So I'm assuming the original Noah.
I'm the original.
Okay, original Noah, original right now. Yeah.
I'm going for the lowest score at this point.
It's a 20 questions here. You'll be-
Honestly, maybe I do have time. I thought it was gonna be like 6.
I'm coming.
No, it's
It's soon gonna be Noah 1. Technically still Noah 2.
This is your regular. So it goes upside down.
Oh, let's go.
Yeah,
Ten
1945.
people got it right? I'm impressed with you all. I didn't know that.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I got that right. You're very smart.
Noah the first.
So like, think about it. It took almost like 30 years for a vaccine to develop for the flu when a pandemic happened, like occurred like 30 years earlier. So yeah, vaccine was age to die.
What?
6 factorial over
Do the
9
math or you
divided
can know the answer? It's up to you.
Oh no.
Yeah.
People actually know how to do factorials without the calculator. Like, people actually do factorials by hand.
I don't really
I don't
remember
think I like
what
it.
I can't remember what was that. Oh, wait.
Noah the math is.
Did you get it right now?
I got it
Yes,
wrong.
so it
Okay.
took, in comparison,
Yeah,
the
I
point of
literally,
this
I
was
can't do it
that
without a
we
calculator.
had
My brain
pandemic
hurts.
And then like 6 months, they came up with the vaccine, and this took 50 years to come up with something. This was a long time ago.
Polio.
But of course, it was a long time ago, and this was also a long time ago, but still, in essence, look how far we've come. You
Do
know?
y'all remember where the first polio vaccine was created? Children.
That was what they told me in the orientation. Hey, oh.
Oh, looks like I have a math question. First, doesn't it?
It does hurt a little bit.
What do you spend for your study now?
How many diseases have been fully eradicated by humans? Oh, yeah, by that.
I was gonna say.
Shay got you those? She never got to beat the socks.
Ooh, right.
Which one?
Are you sure that's right?
Yeah. By vaccines, I think
I mean, like,
one.
Yes. What did you guys think it was?
I just thought you guys.
How so?
What is the second one that you guys got? Smallpox? No, I'm just curious.
I thought polio, but then I realized immediately as I hit it, that was so dumb because they're still everywhere. Like, there's still so many countries where it's from.
How many you guys?
So bad. Oh, let's go.
Wait a minute, if Noah, if Jesus Noah took the move,
We'll figure it out later.
On the board, that's it.
the system that recognizes foreign molecules and acts to immobilize.
I've got this one. What is the renal system?
That's a great question.
Oh.
All the way to 10th place.
That sounded a little bit green.
I'm only 1 point behind number 3, so.
What antibiotic is commonly used in vaccines to prevent contamination with other bacteria? If you guys can figure it out by 15 seconds. Huh?
Something already answered.
Oh, some people always forget. Yeah. What?
I can't even pronounce
I'm so curious what Which vaccine preventable disease is not affected by a hurricane?
Thank you.
That's what I thought too.
Oh,
Oh.
this is not actually a dream. Somebody is like pseudo.
Maybe I voted.
What vaccine other than the HPV vaccine prevents a form of cancer? The music's very apt. Yeah. What vaccine vaccine?
I'm in 14th place. I'm 95 countries with only 15 players.
Not 100K, by the way.
Yeah, I'm not doing great this round either.
They're not winning, it's not you.
Somebody just picked up.
Noah's here with like 4 chances to win, we still have.
Woo, I got another one right.
Moved up to 13.
Solid 11. Answer streak of 1.
Me too. I was
I'm coming to you.
Whoever smiley faces, you're number 4.
Well, unless he says it, it's not him.
You guys know, like.
I know this. I don't even know that.
technically it's a Spanish to join the nation.
It's not a
Oh,
direct
it's
translation.
not.
I already
I got that wrong, but.
Oh my god. I
Oh,
went
that
from
was a big
14
jump.
to 6. Same.
Right, that's like 4 years.
The only reason I remember that is because the only reason I remember that is because my professor, he hated cows, so he would always talk about cows.
Yeah, smallpox.
So that's it.
I forget, like, I've been taking so many,
Yeah.
like,
I'll be 18 milk too. So.
I mean, I'm not a big milk fan.
Yeah, very much. I can explain why it was cows, because they found that, many years ago, when they were still in like, dealing with smallpox, they discovered the people who had been working with cows and got cowpox on their arms were immune to smallpox, and that was the first vaccine. They would give them like bits of cowpox, like skin bits of it, of cowpox, and then later smallpox to people, so that they would be, that was their first vaccine, that's what the word vaccine comes from the word.
It was like milkmaids were like.
Yeah, the
really
milkmaids.
pretty.
The milkmaids used to, they had got it, and it would just be like a rash, so they wouldn't be worried about it. But then they later found that they were just immune to smallpox.
It was so gross. They would literally like, what they would do, they.
Oh, no,
Yeah,
like,
yeah. Like it was so gross.
I mean, it's.
I'm not a
less
G.
gross than,
what
like,
do you guys do if they're supposed to get a vaccine against a disease that is not common in the United States? As in they're traveling. There's a word that means. Yeah, that's the one. Good job, everyone.
That's core value.
I just like the fourth option.
I think, yeah, green should also be.
Yeah, I love it. Get the vaccine because it's cool. Thank you.
That's also correct answer. Think about it.
Yeah.
I said it was correct.
You would accept it.
I should take a 5 down.
The statement is common, is talking about the reduction rates in disease.
Oh, Henry. I answered it with that reading.
Yeah. Only group hygiene and nutritional health event. It's actually legit. CDC told.
I'm not a G.
Alright, next.
I'm not a G.
I don't.
I'm not.
I'm not a G and Noah. The risk of natural blank outweighs the risk of immunization for every recommended vaccine.
Oh shit. I'm about to go off the leaderboard again. Oh,
Yeah, the risk of natural infection. Because a lot of people are worried if they get the vaccine, they'll get infected because like mild side effects.
Yeah.
But that's just because their body is responding for the first time.
Never mind
Okay, smiley face. Like, hey, all the Noahs on the leaderboard. This is amazing.
No, there's another Noah. Noah 4. It's me. I'm never making it to the
Noah
leaderboard.
Noah 4. Get on the leaderboard. I want to see.
It's not. It's really not possible. I've got.
knows on the podium, I'll be so happy.
Natural immunity is better than vaccine acquired immunity or false. That's it. Doesn't say. It's all good. In fact, actually, they found in a recent study that the vaccine acquired immunity is actually stronger than natural immunity, because natural, when your body goes through the whole process of developing natural immunity, it's already like beat up a lot. It's used up a lot of its like energy and resources. So in terms of when it's vaccine, because it's like a weakened form of the virus, a lot of times like with flu and stuff, it's not as taxing on the body. So it's kind of, and it spends more time in like memorizing the pathogen.
And of course, natural immunity is a lot less safe because you get the disease. So
Yeah, like we saw in the video, got abducted by something. I don't know.
pretty early. Not gonna lie.
It's for the speaking.
Hey, nothing better for Halloween.
Let's go, Chris.
Oh, that's new.
Flu vaccines generally reduce the risk of illness. Wow. No point for nothing.
All in.
I feel like the most select.
Ah,
I just got double.
that was wrong.
I'm in sixth place. I can get up on board. I'm only one spot away from
Oh,
you.
but I think that the reason it's so like smaller number than other vaccines is because the flu virus keeps on mutating and there's no way. So what works one year doesn't work next year. That's why the number is kind of small, but it's still pretty good.
You still right?
I still buy it. You're fine.
Imagine if I ended up being the only no on the board. I would laugh so hard.
Oh.
Around what percentage of Ohio is flu vaccinated? This came up twice in the presentation. You gotta get it.
Holy.
Oh, shit.
Oh, okay. It came up once already in the.
Yes! I'm on the board!
No four.
I've missed like every question, so I don't know how I got here.
You need 2 doses of this vaccine to combat this foul disease.
That's funny.
Of course, definitely.
Oh, no.
I'm going back down off the board, guys. Oh, I'm still on the board. I'm still on the board.
Oh.
Lower.
You were just ahead of me. You're 1,008 points ahead of me.
Okay, the leaderboard.
2 points behind you.
Oh, no, it's 3 is the highest timer though. At 12 to 15 months, it recommends children receive the MMR vaccine, protecting them against.
So read all the options.
Yes.
Yes, measles, mumps, and rubella, not Hernandez. All right.
I can only find you falling down, John. That's when you should get the next one wrong.
I'd rather not. 'Cause I'm really proud of myself for making it on the board.
All right, let's do this for fun. 21 years ago today, the Soviet Union launched the crew space to study certain microbes. I would have added 2 make vaccines that didn't work out. Which of these places they go? 21 years ago today.
It's over for me. I'm still in fifth.
Damn
I
it,
got
65 points.
Yeah, so they went to ISF, and right now they're studying a lot of these like microbes in space that they're trying to understand if they can make proteins that we on Earth don't have microbes.
Space protein?
Yeah, space proteins to kind of, yeah, space proteins, yes, to kind of see if we can make our vaccines more efficiently and better. So we're doing it in ISF, along with 10,000 other things. That's so good. Hope you guys are fun. Smiley face is wonderful. Somebody should announce themselves. Somebody worked really hard. Who's my smiley face?
Okay, who are the other no's? You're Noah 2, you were Noah 4, who's Noah 3?
I don't know, yeah.
Who's me?
Yeah, who's the chief?
Who is the chief?
Harry?
Oh,
No, actually.
Who is Frank? Somebody claimed the third place. Oh. Nice. Good job.
Sam was faster
Do you
though.
think we would have made it to the board? I missed
That was
the first like 10.
such a huge climb.
Right, I was gonna
Nice.
say, I missed the first 10 questions, so.
Hey, people were saying just like Ohio's vaccination is guys.
No, I wanted to click. So,
Right, just one last thing, just like a positive outlook thing, vaccines rock. Obviously, they saved a bunch of lives, maybe helped health breakthrough. even though they haven't eradicated as many diseases as you guys probably thought, they definitely decrease the prevalence of them like by so much. And especially in developing countries, they're such an important tool in improving public health. And also, I also want to point out like the developmental times for like certain vaccines. And as you can see, like for the longest time, it always took like at least 20 years. And in the case of polio, almost like more than 50 years to like develop a reusable vaccine. But we managed to create, or our scientists managed to create a vaccine in like what is it, like around a year for a disease that had been like spreading throughout the world. So just something to think about. That's all we have for you.
Had fun today.
All the wordies I saw this weekend.
I know what?
A lot of people, yeah. I don't know why they want to do it, but, first announcement, nothing too crazy. The grow up's closing on Wednesday, so I know he's flying. Adam's not here, but you can ask me no questions. And we have our speaker series on Friday, run by people external. This is information. We'll send out a recap email too, but it's from 4 to 7 on Friday. So anything after that? No, okay. Looking for backup. We got 3 really cool speakers, so I definitely hope to stop by. Even if you can't stay the whole time.
In case you don't know where Teachers is, because you're like in the campus or whatever, it is in a kind of weird spot.
It's in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah,
It's a really pretty
behind.
It is a very nice building. You're gonna be surprised that like it's that nice. So you're gonna be like, I can't believe the buildings we have to go into every day. Well, these people are going to like the nicest building on campus.
Okay, well, they're gonna become teachers, so they should get something.
Is that what the board teachers is?
Yeah, it's
But
teachers.
why is it
And
that?
then there was this criminal justice.
I was gonna say criminal
It is.
justice.
It's also criminal justice and then
Teachers die.
what's the other one? Because the college has something else besides
It's a bunch of
education.
stuff. They have a lot of
Oh,
boxes.
I think it's also like super.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can-
What is it? It's like C.
CECH, College of Educational Criminal Justice and Health Services.
That's what they reverse right there.
Right, so we did I'm a tour guide and I'm like, I don't know.
Tell yourself and then not know, okay? Next week we'll know. But yeah, 4 to 7, stop by at any point. And there was snacks and stuff too, so. Yeah. If you have any questions, you can ask me now. Ask these questions more. And, oh yeah, also, Marie wanted me to remind everyone that Ball Ball is happening on Thursday. Not affiliated with GloMed, but it's just a fun UC homecoming thing. So if you want to get tickets, signifies like posts and stuff, or you can ask us again.
Yeah, and if you have questions, you should definitely direct those to Maria, not at you. We don't know these things, she does. Those questions have to go to her.
But it's really fun.
Yeah.
I recommend you guys go. If you can. But, yeah. Anyone have a collective breath quote?
Why are you looking at me?
I don't know, I like subversions vaccines well. I don't know. That's your birth control.
Yeah, vaccines are dope, bro.
And with that, anyone else? Okay, vaccines are dope, bro. Go ahead, soften your gaze or close your eyes, whatever you feel comfortable doing. Take a deep breath in and out. Well, enjoy your weeks. I guess if you'd like to have as many time you can, but otherwise.
Also, the e-board meeting does not start at 8. If you have any questions for us, we're not having the e-board meeting, but if you have questions for us, please feel free to ask us.